and welcome to my video. I'm Hussain, a senior analyst with a background in GRC, cybersecurity, and corporate business development. Over the years, I have developed organizations, strengthened IT governance, streamlined compliance, and reduced risk across finance, healthcare, and energy sectors. My work often involves designing and optimizing control frameworks aligned with standards like SOC 1 and 2, ISO 27001, and PCI DSS. But what drives me most is turning complex systems into clear, actionable strategies and give the best possible solution to my clients. So, in this project, this is exactly what I had the opportunity to do. So I'm going to give you an introduction about my project that I recently had done with some great details about how I handled this project. So, and where I was responsible for conducting cyber risk assessment for a growing digital healthcare enterprise, a client operating within the government sector. So that's not something I take lightly. When it comes to public infrastructure, the stakes shift. A cyber incident here does not just affect internal systems, it impacts taxpayers' money, taxpayer funded operations, citizen services, and national trust. That's why this assessment was not just technical, it was strategic. Every control gap had the potential to ripple across departments, budgets, and essential services. So my role was to surface these risks clearly, align stakeholders, and build a roadmap that protected both uptime and accountability. So the goal was straightforward, but highly impacted, which is to identify vulnerabilities that could expose sensitive financial and procurement data, and to strengthen the organization's governance posture ahead of its next phase of expansion. So, what's the context in this project? The organization was scaling rapidly, onboarding new vendors, integrating payment systems, and digital procurements. So, while the clinical side of the business had mature controls, the supporting departments lagged behind in risk oversight. So I was brought in to perform a structured risk assessment across these departments, across their procurement lifecycle, focusing on vendor onboarding, invoice approvals, and data retention, all of which could affect patient privacy and financial compliance. So the question comes here, what was really my role and responsibility in this project? So my responsibility was to lead the end-to-end assessment process. I began my building data flow map using inputs from finance and procurement teams, showing exactly where data entered, where it was moving, and where it exited the system. Then I ran SQL queries within their reporting environments to validate transactional integrity. That's when things got interesting. I uncovered records with mismatched vendor IDs and approval timestamps happening outside standard working hours, which is not just a technical glitch. That is showing it's a red flag. So it pointed to something deeper, whether it's a control were being enforced or the process was being bypassed. So in the public sector, we know that in this environment, that's not just risky, it can become a really expensive. These were not just anomalies in a spreadsheet. They were not just numbers or just figures. They were signals pointing to gaps in accountability, traceability, and governance. So instead of simply documenting, I visualized the findings in Power BI and brought stakeholders into the conversation. So it involved into cleaning the data, into converting it into an understandable language for for my client. Seeing the data live changed everything. It shifted the mindset from we are compliant to we need to act fast to get this fixed. So this analysis gave me quantifiable evidence of weak controls, not just anecdotal feedback from interviews. Each issue was then documented in an Excel based risk register. So, what were the major challenges in this scenario? One of the biggest challenges was stakeholder engagement and misaligned priorities across the organization. For example, teams had different interpretation of what compliance meant. Finance cared about approvals. On the other hand, the IT department focused on system updates. And management, on the other hand, the IT department focused on system updates. And management, on the other hand, prioritized audit readiness. So this misalignment led to bridge this gap, I created a short interactive sessions where I visualized our SQL findings in Power BI using risk heat maps and trend charts. Seeing live data made their issue real, like I mentioned before. And it changed the conversation. We are compliant to we need to tighten up our controls, right? So back to the risk register that I mentioned earlier, the tools and techniques which I used. Number one, as you must have heard by now, SQL for that is for transactional data validation and identifying process irregularities. The other tool I used was Excel from Microsoft for maintaining the risk register and control gap matrix. And the other tool I used was Power BI to visualize risk levels and remediation process. And one of my favorite tools is RSA Archer to automate workflows, assign control owners, and track closures. You can use other tools at this point, but my preference was to do more than just a project manager and risk analyst. I was at that point a data analyst. So apart from that, the controls that I was focusing on was ISO 31000 and CIS controls, and which is to align risk classification and assessment methodology. By combining these tools, the project evolved from a static audit style review into a living data driven risk management process. So at this point, we will be thinking what were the results and what was the impact? The final assessment identified 18 control gaps, including 5 related to duplicate vendor records, 4 tied to inconsistent role based access approvals, and 3 involving missing validations checks in invoice uploads. So within 6 weeks, you can see 12 out of 18 were remediated. by updating workflows in Archer and enforcing mandatory data validation in SQL-based reporting. So the result was a 35% reduction in financial data discrepancies and a measurable improvement in approval transparency. So the next comes, what did we really learn from this? What will be the advice that I would give to my fellows, to my audience? This project taught me that, well, data governance is not just about perfection. It's about consistency. The most powerful risk assessment come when data analytics supports governance frameworks. So my advice to project managers is, number one, always back your findings with data. It builds credibility. Number two, use visualization tool like I used the one in Power BI. And you don't have to stick with Power BI. There are many other tools in the market, and that is to unite the team under one language, which is evidence. That basically gives you the evidence, right? And most importantly, design workflows that enforce accountability automatically rather than manually. So in the end, our success was not about fixing numbers. It was about building trust through clarity and traceability. So at the end, this project reaffirmed something I have always believed. Modern risk management is not just about analytics. It is about people. Data may guide the path, but it's the human insight that gives it meaning. And if I may add, project managers today are like multi-cloud infrastructure. A lot of times I hear about these days artificial intelligence, uh, and there's a fear in our organization and across in different fields. People are talking about having their jobs eliminated by the artificial intelligence. But what I like to say to all of them is the project manager specifically. I'm talking in that context. I'm saying that they are multi-cloud infrastructure. When they choose to, they can blend their knowledge and skills to adapt across any environment, whether if it's a technical or non-technical. It is a mindset, not just a role. Take an example of an Oracle. So Oracle, their push for multi-cloud support shows how integration across platforms can unlock powerful tools and deliver highly impacted solutions for our clients across different businesses. That kind of agility is not just technical. It is strategic, and it's always in demand. So artificial intelligence will, I agree, will continue to evolve and offer incredible capabilities. There is no doubt about that. But it's not limitless. Its strength lies in augmentation, not replacement. The real transformation happens when human judgment and the artificial intelligence, these two forces work together rather working apart. So that's all about my project and this video. I hope you will like this presentation, and I see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.